Check this out. 50 Cent, master of reinvention. It's all happening. Let's go back in time. Back to 2007. That year, 50 Cent brazenly stated that he would retire if Kanye West's Graduation outsold his album, Curtis. Both albums were released on the same day, September 11, 2007. Here's what he said to SOHH.com.
Let's raise the stakes. If Kanye West sells more records than 50 Cent on September 11th, I'll no longer write music. I'll write music and work with my other artists, but I won't put out any more solo albums.
If Kanye West sells more records, I won't put out any more solo albums. Now, I'm not sure how many of us actually believed 50 when we heard that he made that statement. I mean, this was 50 Cent, Bulletproof 50, New York City's own bad guy. We loved him. We hoped he wouldn't honor that statement. But he made that statement because that's how towering of a wave he was riding of confidence, cocksureness, and commercial superiority. A wave he created through grit and a hustler's ambition. We covered that all in the Sales Battle of the Century breakdown. Check it out if you missed it. But spoiler alert, 50 did not outsell Kanye West. He lost that sales battle, and of course, he did not stop putting out solo albums. Kanye moved 957,000 units in that first week, outselling 50 by 266,000 units. 50 would go on to release 2 more albums after that and a slew of singles and guest appearances. But to me, that was always the turning point in the journey of 50 Cent, the music maker, because this was the first time Ferrari F50 exhibited commercial vulnerability. Now, in no way am I sleeping on the 691,000 units Curtis actually moved in its first week, essentially the platinum equivalent in that era's craptastic retail environment. But ironically, 50's self-described artist album sounded artistically years past his prime. That's how he was talking about Curtis back then. He was calling it his artist album. Clearly Get Rich or Die Trying it was not, no need to waste words, but lyrically aspiring tracks like A Baltimore Love Thing or I Don't Need 'Em on the Massacre eclipsed any semblance of artistry Curtis the album supposedly offered. Instead, the buying public was treated to Omaha steak-style manufactured beef and false proclamations of retirement if outsold. In that sense, the gimmicks felt too gimmicky, grossly outpacing the product. Curtis at his best was a passable LP loaded with pop-centric guest appearances, generic bump and grind raps, and gun music. At worst, it represented the last grasp of commercial viability from a soon-to-be fallen album sales titan. At least in my opinion. That was 2007. 2 years later, in 2009, 50 Cent's next album, Before I self-destructed on the charts, moving an embarrassing 160,000 units first week. 160,000 units first week and declined consistently each week after. I mean, it felt like a whole different era from back when he would do 1 million in 7 days. While the warning signs leading up to this official sales calamity were more obvious than those leading up to 9/11, for example, numerous delays in rescheduled release dates, slumping music sales environment, ineffective lead single, tiring gimmicks that proved more polarizing than profitable, digital leakage a month prior to release at all. The idea that Brand 50 would ever produce such a meager SoundScan showing, leak or no leak, seemed more like a wish from one of his laundry list of detractors than an actual reality. I mean, 50 Cent was still 50 Cent after all. Surely an artist that sold over 20 million albums in 6 years, amassing upwards of over 150 million pre-recession dollars through diversified business ventures, and lived in Mike Tyson's house could crack 200,000 in his first week, right? I mean, especially if they're tossing in a free DVD or two, right? Well, as the rap gods deemed it, 50 Cent's once Teflon tough sales record had officially been sidelined by reality's Sidewinder. The super gangster persona and arguably dicey industry maneuvering that propelled him to hip-hop's power position was now stunting his artistic growth, imprisoning his personality. This was a new era and he wasn't making new fans. He wasn't moving units, at least not to the degree that we were all used to. The public had spoken. His public had spoken, and we weren't buying 5-0 no more. And the crowd goes wild, as if Jake Paul has just won the fight. If only an ending could be so simple, because while internet thugs and hip-hop purists and Curtis haters worldwide web-wide rejoiced in what looked like Goliath's downfall, 50 downshift in what has become a legendary reinvention. Away from the music, he already had a Reebok deal in his own G-Unit sneakers. He released a video game called Bulletproof. He reportedly netted over $100 million once Coca-Cola bought Vitamin Water, which he was an early investor in. He had his own cologne, powered by 50. I wore it, women liked it. He had a revamped public image, ditching the G-Unit wife beaters for button downs and dress boots, looking like Eddie Winslow with a bullet tooth wound. And most impressively, he released a book called The 50th Law, written by Robert Greene of 48 Laws of Power fame, that was aimed at dispelling internal fear that happened to be released at the height of the Great Recession. Incredibly impeccable timing. If you haven't read 50th Law, punch yourself in the face. That new image ran contra to the overtly aggressive content 50 was actually pushing on Before I Self-Destruct, which raises the question as to why undergo a visual transformation at all at that time. I mean, think about this. If Before I Self-Destruct was a return to the gritty 50, which is what he told Tavis Smiley on his show that year, because he had a negative response to Curtis, then why not market himself in a way similar to how he marketed himself on The Massacre or Get Rich or Die Trying? I mean, his core fans, hardcore fans, surely would feel more realness if the curtains matched the drapes. No, this shift was intentional. It wasn't obvious at that point in time, but there was much more to it. If there's one takeaway from the Curtis Jackson story, it's that 50 Cent constantly moves with reason. There are always premeditated motivations behind his actions. There is always a purpose. When he kicked in hip-hop's door by negatively name-dropping anyone of any worth on the now classic How to Rob, there was a purpose behind it. When he wankstered Ja Rule, putting him on blast for singing too much, then bait and switched his entire career, there was a purpose behind it. When he flipped Cameron's Curtis tirade on the Angie Martinez show into the title of his next album, there was a purpose behind it.
How much did the mob sell, Curtis?
There's always a purpose behind 50 Cent's actions. The question is, why would someone who coined himself New York City's own bad guy then proceed to sell 13 million copies of that first album, present himself in any other way at that time? Why discount or alter the brand? What was the purpose behind that shift? To me, that purpose revealed itself in the 50th Law. In the book, he says, 50 Cent is a person I created. Soon it will be time to destroy him and become somebody else. Become somebody else. That was 14 years ago. Since then, 50 Cent has taken a step back and Curtis Jackson has taken 2 steps forward. He's positioned himself as a business mogul and power broker and an extremely successful film and television producer, seemingly seamlessly transitioning into Hollywood in a way that few rappers not named Ice Cube ever have. The success of his TV show Power has netted him a $150 million deal with Starz, a 3-series deal and access to all of Starz and Lionsgate's platforms. He's also negotiated deals with WeTV for hip-hop homicides and another deal with Lucid Media for an unscripted crime series slated to premiere on Peacock later this year. He also reportedly has a film with Eminem lined up. In every sense, 50 successfully reinvented himself from a brolic gun-toting gangster rapper into film and business mogul. It's all happening. Now here's what's interesting. 50's in the middle of celebrating the 20th anniversary of Get Rich or Die Trying. He also just notched his first Billboard cover story. And in the conversation, he talks about how a plethora of his previous beefs were actually very strategic, from Empire to French Montana. He also talks about all the things he loves about Nicki Minaj. And he talks quite a bit about the new music he has lined up. He says that he's gonna be on King's Disease 4, Nas's King's Disease 4, and he also says he's back in the studio with Dr. Dre. Check this out. Describing how the process differs now versus then when working with the good doctor, 50 says, The difference now is, with a lot of stuff I would send, I'm looking at the angles of it happening from different perspectives instead of putting myself in the middle of actually doing something to someone. I wrote a lot of the material like that before, but there are a million other approaches to use. So I'll do those other things so I can still capture what goes on in the environment now. But it's through the lens of not being in the game. It's the perception of the game from my perspective. Perspective, growth, evolution. I love when 50 Cent gets lyrically creative. Baltimore Love Thing is still the most imaginative track in his catalog, in my opinion. But check this out, closing out the conversation with Billboard. Billboard asked 50 if prime 50 Cent could still break through and do the same commercial damage in today's environment. Here's what he said. It would be a lot different. I look at the new artists that embody the streets like they're the new 50 Cent. What's going to be difficult and important for them to do is figure out how to navigate themselves. If you ask them if they're afraid of anything, it's going to be tough because they've been facing those obstacles the entire time. So they're not scared. But they can F it up for themselves, like with whom they bring around them and the energy they carry. It can destroy a force. That's the obstacle they've got to get around. Themselves. I think if they get that information fast enough and could look at it the right way, they'll be able to do music longer. If not, they're going to crash right in front of you. Did you catch that? Billboard asked 50 if prime 50 Cent could break through in today's environment. 50 says it would be a lot different, then pivots to giving great advice to new artists while completely sidestepping the question, which is wild to think about from someone as direct and upfront as 50 Cent is in interviews and in life. I mean, here's one of the most seminal artists of the century who I would say has been essentially a decade plus away from focusing on music. There's the Power theme song, there's his masterful work with Pop Smoke, there's I'm the Man, which I love, and Crack a Bottle. The rest of his releases have largely been one-offs and features that largely fell well under the zeitgeist. And now he's back in the studio with Dr. Dre and plans to release a new project 20 years after the debut of the generationally impactful Get Rich or Die Tryin', while his broader reach through Hollywood bona fides are bigger than ever. Songs primarily blow up through film, television, and TikTok these days, and 50 Cent has his own Black Gangsta Marvel Universe ready-made for his gun-toting street tales. Is it out of the question that 50 Cent's new music reaches the masses in a meaningful way? He's the master of reinvention. Remember, can he reinvent himself musically? Is it possible that 50 can sit on the top of music, film, and television simultaneously? I don't have the answer to these questions.
Static Selector.
Another Saturday, another TBD. Thank you guys for rocking with me each week. I really appreciate it. If you haven't checked out this Billboard piece, I suggest you do so. It's really a fascinating look at 50 Cent. He is making another album with Dr. Dre. He also is working with Eminem, and as I mentioned before, he's also working with Nas. He's gonna be on King's Disease 4, which is also a full circle moment. They had some public friction at one point in time, so it was great to see these two titans from Queens get in the studio together. I'm a huge fan of 50 Cent. I'm always really excited to hear his new projects, whether that's film, television, or whether that's his music. I'm curious to see what his new music sounds like. I hope that he's able to reinvent himself. I think it'll be really, really great for music. I think it'll be really great for the culture. I also think it'll be really great for the community because he brings something so unique to the table. And as we've seen in recent years with Nas's incredible run over the past few years, Jay-Z's 444 a few years back, we have seen people who have been titans in this space step back to the microphone and do some incredible, incredible art. Hopefully 50 Cent can join that lineage. Also, gotta shout out the analysts. Thank you guys for supporting this channel through your incredible analysis each week. It's priceless. And also by supporting the Linktree, donating to the channel, helping us forward this mission each week. But let me know what you think about 50 Cent's presumed return to the microphone. Do you think he still has it? Do you think he has something new to offer? I love hearing him say that he's talking about it from a different perspective. Can't wait to see how this all turns out. As always, my name is Justin Hunt. Like and subscribe to the channel. Follow @TheCompanyMan on everything. Hit that bell. It's all happening.